Can the Met survive the force at rock bottom, rotten with racism, sexism and homophobia? Baroness Casey's review is unsparing. If it can't reform, it should be broken up.
You should take seriously that victims, women, vulnerable victims, children, the people we're supposed to protect above and beyond anybody else, you can't guarantee it and you don't do it.
For those who've suffered at the Met's hands, all trust is shot.
In their eyes, because Jan was vulnerable, she was no one to them. I don't have no trust in them anymore. Who do you go to? No one.
The Met Commissioner's response was to apologise, to promise reform, but even with reams of apparent evidence, denied the claim the force's problems were institutional. So, are they capable of change? Also on News at 10 tonight. I misled MPs, but not intentionally. The dossier of Partygate evidence Boris Johnson hopes will save his political skin in a grilling tomorrow. As Xi and Putin flaunt their alliance, the warning the Russian president fired at the UK. Debbie has the details. Gwyneth Paltrow in court over claims of a hit-and-run ski crash. And the mother of all challenges, Katie Melua, tells Nina why the music industry must back mums.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. It is hard to know where to start with Baroness Casey's review into the Met Police, but it could not be more damning, calling it institutionally racist, misogynistic and homophobic. The report contains one horror story after another. It exposes a boys' club culture in an organisation which systemically fails women and children, where the firearms squad splash out on useless kit, while overworked sexual offences units don't even have enough fridge space for vital evidence. A force where a Muslim officer found bacon left in their boots, and where the detection rates for rape are so low, one officer said it might as well be legal. The grim list goes on and on. Today, there were calls for root and branch reform, even a suggestion the Met be broken up. For many, one thing is clear: more apologies simply won't cut it.
Wayne Couzens and David Carrick, two of the most heinous criminals to wear the uniform, but they were far from alone. Face after face of those we should trust, but all of these Metropolitan Police officers have been convicted of crimes since 2021. In a force that's also guilty of institutional misogyny, homophobia and racism, branded as being rotten to the core, unable to police itself. And tonight, no guarantees there aren't more rapists and killers hiding in its ranks.
The system is failing. You should take seriously that your rank and file cannot be guaranteed to have integrity. You should take seriously that victims, women, vulnerable victims, children, the people we're supposed to protect above and beyond anybody else, you can't guarantee it and you don't do it. And then on top of that, you run an organisation where discrimination and prejudice is writ large.
Her report paints an excoriating picture of the force, who, it said, underprotects and over-polices black communities, who are more likely to be stopped and searched, handcuffed, battened and tasered, that has allowed predatory and unacceptable behaviour to flourish. Of rape, one officer told the review, the detection rate is so low, you may as well say it's legal in London. A force that has deep-seated homophobia within it. One openly gay officer said he'd seen messages where colleagues joked about stopping and searching him whilst off duty. He told the review, "I'm scared of the police. I don't trust my own organisation. I will vary the route I walk to avoid walking past police officers when I'm not at work." The boss, Sir Mark Rowley, has spent much of his 6 months as Commissioner saying sorry for his force's failings, but he doesn't accept Baroness Casey's use of the term institutional.
I accept her diagnosis about the racism, misogyny and homophobia in the organisation, and also that we have these systemic failings, management failings and cultural failings. I understand her use of the term institutional. It's not a term I use myself.
Yet this year-long review condemns the systemic failures within the force too. Discrimination it found that was rampant across its ranks. One Sikh officer spoke of his beard being trimmed, another had his turban put in a shoebox, and a Muslim officer found bacon in his boots. And rape cases being dropped because DNA evidence was destroyed in broken fridges and freezers.
There are systemic and chronic problems with leadership and culture. And what we need to do is change the culture, change the practice and change the systems in place.
This is not the first report, and it likely won't be the last. The Met was described as institutionally racist after Stephen Lawrence's racially motivated killing 30 years ago. 2 decades later, another report into the murder of Daniel Morgan in 1987 found the Met was institutionally corrupt. These new findings not surprising to his brother.
The oversight of the police has been terrible for decades. You know, the answer to the Home Office, and the Home Office has been useless for decades. So it's not surprised that all of this has suddenly bubbled up, you know, after all these years.
Baroness Casey says all her recommendations should be implemented, including independent experts overhauling the force. Otherwise, it should be broken up if it cannot affect change quickly enough. Sejal Karia, News at 10.
As Sejal's pointing out there, this is not the first time institutional failings at Scotland Yard have been laid bare. Many question what has changed in the nearly 25 years since the Macpherson inquiry into the Met's handling of Stephen Lawrence's murder found that it was institutionally racist. And indeed, they ask what will be different this time. The Met Commissioner has spoken of recruiting more officers that Londoners can rely on. But when even some of its own don't trust the force, how can the public be expected to?
Jan was a brilliant mother. She done everything for her children.
For the family of Jan Mustafa, the Met's failings aren't systemic or institutional. They're personal.
In their eyes, because Jan was vulnerable, she was no one to them.
She was missing for a year. The police's failure to find her might speak of an overworked force, but also say her family of a service that didn't care.
For 1 year, I can't tell you one good thing that they done for us. The most popular, annoying word we would get told, it's on our to-do list. That's all they used to say.
Her body was eventually found, stored in the home of a known sex offender.
There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but...
Her family believed that if the police had done their job, she might still be alive today.
Why is it, do you think, that detectives didn't take her disappearance seriously?
I think there's a lot of misogyny here with our case. There was victim blaming, we think. Obviously, Jan's race probably will come into that now as well. And it's just not fair. Like, she was our loved one.
Nusrit Methab knows the system from inside the ranks.
You know, I was vilified and I was ostracised.
Once a Met high flyer, she's now suing them over racist and sexist abuse.
There can be no more excuses. It's time for change. And if the Met can't reform, and I think Casey's made that quite clear, then it has to be disbanded and other options explored.
Faith in the force has taken a hit. Successive scandals and a self-defence class tonight where every woman has the name Sarah Everard somewhere in mind.
100%. I think it impacts you so much to know that you might not be able to trust people.
There was things that happened to me and the police didn't do that much, if I'm going to be honest. But I guess it's because of those experiences that now I'm kind of going to self-defense.
Policing by public consent. It is the founding principle of the British system. But what happens when confidence in the force is so corroded that trust begins to collapse? That is the central question posed by the Casey report.
Does your family still trust the police?
No, I don't have no trust in them anymore. Who do you go to? No one.
For the family of Jan Mustafa and for every Londoner, the police need a better answer. John Ray, News at 10.
And Sejal's here now to talk about this further. I mean, it's hard to overstate the scale of what the Met needs to address here and how fast they can affect change. And the fact it's not just now a matter for these individual police forces, the biggest one in the country, but this is a matter of raw politics. It's who pushes this up the agenda and makes this a priority.
You're absolutely right. This isn't just a Metropolitan Police problem. It's a national policing one too. Right now, 6 police forces across England are in special measures, including Cleveland, Staffordshire, Devon and Cornwall, along with the Met. And forces across the country are vetting their police officers. Every time one faces a misconduct hearing or appears in court, it is likely, as John was saying, it's likely to erode public confidence further. And with a general election next year, reforming policing is likely to be a key issue, and that is why the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer today talked about the fact that this review provides a blueprint for radical reform, including national rules for vetting. That was one of his ideas. He says the Casey review requires an immediate and urgent response, a review that has found that sexual offences units in the Met are underfunded and under-resourced, while those that are male-dominated, like specialist firearms, are seen as the elite. Flush with cash, a boys' club. The Diplomatic and Protection Command, where Sarah Everard's killer, Wayne Couzens, and serial rapist David Carrick worked, were described as a dark corner of the Met. Their job is to patrol Downing Street and Parliament, and this review found that there was a sense of entitlement there and that it should now be disbanded. Other recommendations include a dedicated women's protection service, a complete reset of stop and search, and independent experts to ensure change, with a review on progress in 2 and 5 years.
OK, Sejal, thank you very much for taking us through all of that. Thank you. Other news now. No, there's no doubting how much will be at stake for Boris Johnson when he sits down for a lengthy grilling by MPs tomorrow. If the Privileges Committee decides he knowingly lied to the Commons over lockdown parties, he could face a fight to keep his seat. Today, the former PM set out his defence. Mr Johnson admits he did mislead Parliament, but not, in his words, intentionally or recklessly, and he insists he has nothing to hide. There'll certainly be no hiding in front of the cameras tomorrow.
At last, the former Prime Minister is giving his defence to the charge that he lied to MPs about parties in 10 Downing Street.
Do you think you'll be vindicated?
Because although he attended 5 such parties during the pandemic, this is what he told MPs in December 2021.
All guidance was followed completely during Number 10. I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken.
In a written statement to the Privileges Committee, which is investigating Boris Johnson's alleged misconduct, he said, "I accept that the House of Commons was misled by my statements that the rules and guidance had been followed completely at Number 10. But he insisted that when the statements were made, they were made in good faith. I didn't intentionally or recklessly mislead the House." He said he got it so wrong because, on the basis of assurances I received from those with direct knowledge, I honestly believed that these were lawful work gatherings and, as Prime Minister, I'm reliant on advice from officials. There's nothing reckless or unreasonable about that. Here are the Downing Street parties that took place while the rest of us were banned from having such fun. But Johnson says he had no idea they were wrong and no one told him. Though this former Downing Street advisor, Dominic Cummings, insists he did. Johnson says Cummings is not credible because he went from being friend to arch political enemy. In training for the ordeal, Johnson has raised concerns that the committee has been partisan and unfair. The Cabinet Minister in his own party disagrees.
I have confidence in the Privileges Committee to do that work. It's a cross-party committee. It has a Conservative majority on the committee. It'll produce its report and then it'll be a matter for the House of Commons. It's not a matter for the government.
Inevitably, initial judgment has a political flavour.
Those of us who sat in Parliament and listened to Boris Johnson's explanations, denials, and now see this report, know that he is really taking us all for fools.
The evidence from Boris's submission shows that he didn't deliberately mislead the House of Commons, either recklessly or alternatively.
For the Cabinet meeting today, what happens to their former boss matters.
Ministers, did Boris Johnson mislead Parliament?
Because if he gets a severe punishment, he may have to fight a by-election to keep his seat, and that would be a humiliation for the entire Tory party. Robert Peston, News at 10.
Well, I'm joined now by Paul, our UK editor, who, of course, has broken story after story exclusively on this. So what are you looking out for tomorrow, Paul? What should we expect?
Well, I think we should expect high stakes, Julie. For some, this keeps open the door potentially for Boris Johnson's return as PM. For others, it could end his career as MP. What I've been told tonight by Boris Johnson's team is that he is looking forward to giving evidence, and he thinks that the committee has not a shred of evidence against him. I'm told that he will swear on the King James Bible to begin proceedings, which should get the theatre off to a good start. And then he will be flanked by both of his lawyers, who will be able to confer with him during the session, but they won't be able to answer questions on his behalf. The whole thing's due to last for about 4 hours, and the central claim that Boris Johnson will make is that his advisers misled him, which is how he inadvertently, in his view, misled MPs. I don't think there was anything hugely new in any of the evidence today, though, and I think what the committee will argue is that he shouldn't have just been led by his advisers, he should have been led by his own eyes. He was at these events, he saw, or should have seen, that there was no way that they were within the rules. But tomorrow should be an extraordinary moment, whoever comes out on top.
OK, indeed. Paul, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, within the Kremlin's grand halls, there was a fresh display of unity between Russia and China's leaders today as they held a second round of talks. It's a relationship which Vladimir Putin declared has never been better. And while he hailed Xi Jinping's proposals for peace in Ukraine, President Putin also issued a warning to the UK.
Standing shoulder to shoulder, flanked by their flags, in the grandeur of the Kremlin palace. This could be an image of unity or isolation on the world stage. When you strip back the ceremonial fanfare and the circuitous red carpet, it is a shared hostility towards the West that unites these two presidents. And today they showed they are on the same page when it comes to the war in Ukraine. The Chinese president will claim this a success, getting the Russian president to sign a statement that he is committed to resuming peace talks. But as ever, the devil is in the detail, and both men signed a document which also recognized Moscow's security concerns. In almost the same breath as he talked about peace, Vladimir Putin threatened a response to the UK providing Ukraine with depleted uranium rounds.
It looks like the West indeed intends to fight Russia until the last Ukrainian. Not on words, but on deeds. If that happens, Russia will respond accordingly.
Sitting next to an alleged war criminal, doing deals on trade, President Xi claimed to stand on the right side of history.
We have always firmly stood on the side of peace and dialogue and on the right side of history.
As that meeting was taking place in Moscow, the Japanese Prime Minister arrived in Ukraine to show his support for President Zelensky. A neatly timed first visit to Kyiv from China's regional rival, which, with no hint of irony, the Chinese government denounced as provocative. It is NATO expansion which Russia and China blame for provoking the war in Ukraine. The head of the alliance today questioned the sincerity of the peace proposals coming out of Moscow and revealed there is evidence Russia has asked Beijing for military aid.
We haven't seen any proof that China is delivering lethal weapons to Russia. But we have seen some signs that this has been a request from Russia.
After appearing in lockstep with Putin, President Xi will find it hard to present himself as a neutral promoter of peace if his next move is indeed a phone call to Ukraine. Debbie Edward, News at 10, Beijing.
Here, counter-terror officers are investigating a shocking incident in which a man was set on fire as he walked home from a mosque. A suspect has been arrested, but the community remains shaken. The attack in Birmingham bears similarities to one in London last month, and police are looking into whether the two are linked.
The attack was caught on a security camera. It's been studied by specialist counter-terrorism officers as they try to establish a motive for the crime. The footage shows the victim being stopped in the street by a man who tries to engage him in conversation. After a brief exchange, he attempts to move on, and even though his path is repeatedly blocked, the elderly man continues his walk down the street. Moments later, liquid is sprayed on him and set alight.
He never troubled nobody in his life. Never. Ever since I've known him.
All the community is feeling very bad, and especially we sorry for the families, very upset about it.
Today, the police identified and arrested a man in the area and took him away for questioning. The victim was on his way back from a local mosque, so the West Midlands force is now liaising with police in London over an apparently similar attack on an 82-year-old man last month near a mosque in Ealing. At the time, the Met issued pictures of a man they wanted to question.
We very quickly after the incident made the connection to the incident that happened in the Metropolitan Police area. We're working closely with the Metropolitan Police, reviewing that to establish to what extent those two incidents are linked, and that does very much part of the ongoing inquiry at this time.
The police in the West Midlands are also looking at this footage, which appears to show the victim being followed shortly before he was attacked. He's suffering serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Ian Woods, News at 10.
In many people's minds, of course, Imran Khan remains one of the finest cricketers Pakistan has produced, but after turning to politics and rising to become the country's Prime Minister, he was ousted in a no-confidence vote last year. The 70-year-old now faces criminal charges, including terrorism, and his supporters have been involved in violent clashes with the police. But he told Rohit it is all part of a conspiracy to get rid of him.
Behind the black bag is the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, who says the government of his successor is trying to kill him. Shielded at first from the glare of the cameras, his face was finally revealed. This court hearing was over terrorism charges and his standoff with the current government, which has turned violent. Bail was granted and a brief reprieve from arrest. And then from his home in Lahore this afternoon, he spoke to ITV News.
Which law have we broken? They keep bringing these false cases against me. I keep going to one court after another to get bail. I am following the law, but the government is not. They've made us into a banana republic. There are no fundamental rights left in Pakistan.
But these are serious allegations. Terrorism, inciting people to violence.
It's a joke. I mean, people in this country know Imran Khan is not a terrorist. There are about 40 terrorist cases on me of terrorism. Just in the last few months, I have 97 cases against me, which range from murder to terrorism, to blasphemy, to sedition. So all this is, if they can't kill me, to put me in prison, so that I should not compete in an election. But with 97 cases, and I'm close to my century.
Imran Khan was once an international cricketer, captaining Pakistan's national side, then leading its government. Prime Minister for 5 years before he was forced out. But this was Lahore at the weekend. Tear gas and clashes. Khan is accused of inciting his supporters, but he says an attempt to arrest him at the weekend was part of a government plot.
3 times I said, look, I'll go and give myself up because I didn't want any bloodshed. And they refused. The people insisted. They said, if they take you, they'll kill you. So eventually they had to back off.
But you could give yourself up, couldn't you? And won't your opponents say that actually this is the best course of action, that this is the one that does the most to prevent civil unrest?
Look, give myself up. Why? What is it that I've done wrong?
If power is the prize, Peace is the price in this political dispute being fought in the courts and on the streets. Rohit Katru, News at 10.
We're used to seeing her on film screens and red carpets, but today the Oscar-winning actor Gwyneth Paltrow appeared in court. She was there to face a claim that her reckless behaviour on the slopes of an American ski resort resulted in a collision, a hit and run as it was described, which left a man with a brain injury. Paltrow insists it was him who crashed into her.
7 years after they collided on a ski slope in Utah, Gwyneth Paltrow walked into court to face the man who's suing her. The actress's smile faded as the trial got underway, and the jury heard Terry Sanderson's claim that he suffered 4 broken ribs and permanent brain damage after their crash. He's seeking more than £2.5 million in damages. Miss Paltrow had been holidaying at a luxury resort in 2016 with her family when the collision took place. The jury was told that she was reckless when she blindly travelled down a mountain, looking back up it as she hit Mr. Sanderson, who, being further down the slope, had right of way. But that is not how the Oscar winner recalled that February morning.
Suddenly she sees 2 skis appear between her skis, and a man comes up right behind her. He comes up almost body to body like this and starts groaning.
Gwyneth Paltrow found fame through roles in the films Shakespeare in Love and Sliding Doors. But 15 years ago, she started to swap Hollywood for lifestyle and beauty influencing.
I usually eat something about 12.
Where she has become a controversial figure in the world of wellness. Now it's her actions away from work that are facing scrutiny. She is countersuing Mr. Sanderson and seeking $1 in damages. The trial in Utah continues. Ellie Pitt, News at 10.
And finally, for musicians going on tour, there's always a lengthy checklist of essentials. Instruments, of course, outfits, passport. For Katie Melua's latest European adventure, the singer will also be taking her baby son and all the paraphernalia that entails. She once worried she'd have to decide between a child or a career ahead of the release of her 9th album. She told Nina she now wants to show others across the industry it shouldn't be a choice they have to make.
So this will be a Royal Albert gig with a difference because you've got a new supporting act.
Yes, I do.
3 months into motherhood, and Katie Melua is preparing for a European tour that takes in the Royal Albert Hall and her baby son Sandro, who will be accompanying her. Once, like others in her industry, she feared that having a baby could affect a job that financially relies most on touring. But she says that parents like her should be supported to have both.
I got so addicted to my work. I was still pedaling like mad in music. And I just realised actually I had to stop and I had to really look at what it is that, you know, would nourish my soul. I happen to have a female front of house engineer and she's fantastic. And she's got a 2.5-year-old. And we actually have toured with the 2.5-year-old. We've encouraged her to bring him on the road.
It's a difficult industry, unpredictable hours, overtime at short notice, difficulty of accessing financial support if you're a freelancer. For many people, it is a choice either or.
I know that's a really horrible place to be in and it's super tough. I would say there are people in the music industry, you know, and they might not be really sort of visible, but there are those of us that want to encourage women.
The music industry has long been accused of not supporting working mothers. In a documentary, singer Paloma Faith highlighted the challenges of touring with a baby.
I don't understand why society says that I can't have everything.
Campaigners say changes are long overdue.
Having allowances in tour budgets for childcare, so babysitters touring, childcare at the event, family-friendly areas at festivals, all will make a really, really big impact for parents working in the industry.
This is the closest thing to crazy I have ever been.
It has taken work for Katie Melua to set up a support structure for her forthcoming tour, but now she is proud to present herself as both a musician and a mum. Nina Nanar, News at 10 at the Royal Albert Hall.
Very peaceful babies, and that is it from us for tonight. As always, you can get updates throughout the evening on our streaming site, ITVX. But for now, from all the team, good night, and we will see you tomorrow.